Hello, humans, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Gamer. Thank you for joining me on Halloween. Thank you for being here. I really do appreciate your likes and your subscriptions, and I do appreciate the time you take to stop by and listen to my channel. And what do I have for you today? I have the top 10 best-selling horror video game franchises of all time, but, we're going to sprinkle in some of our favorites and the games maybe you guys think about when you think of Halloween, and we'll just take it from there because you know this genre has been around for what 41 years now. I would say what when we think about horror games, what's the first one that you think about if you're a Gen X gamer, right? And there might be one or two maybe before it, but in general, right, it's accepted that 1982's Haunted House was the first one, right? And let me say this, this is a disclaimer because I have to go off figures that are just readily available on the internet. And a lot of figures are just kept by video game developers. Some of them don't like sharing them, but this is just what's common knowledge out there. Okay, again, I'm not a reporter. This is not the official news. It's just for your entertainment only. Okay, and let's start off with our top 10 here. Top 10 games that I think are some of the best-selling games, and then we'll go over the things that I played over many Halloweens, of some of the horror games that I played that come to mind. When it comes to collecting video games, it's diminishing returns now, right? I look at my collection and I'm just picking out a few, and to tell you the truth, I don't I don't have the time to spend because pretty soon I'm going to be elbows deep in diapers here in baby formula. So I just picked a few at random that I have here that came to memory, and maybe you guys have some more out there. But we'll start with number 10, Dead Rising, right? Dead Rising has sold about 15 million. Yikes. 15 million units. Now, Dead Rising might not fit the conventional mold of what defines a horror game, but it is absolutely one of the most iconic franchises, right? And it's what's been put out there as far as sales estimates, at least up to what they have right now, which is 2022, right? Next, Outlast, 16 million, And when you start looking at these numbers, they go into the millions. Some of the reasons you're not going to see a lot of the retro games in here is because all these top sales figures came out, after the 2000s. And, Outlast is one of the most iconic horror franchises of the 2010s, if you guys remember. The game contains, a chilling asylum setting, expertly crafted tension, in the absence of the means to defend yourself. I think that really what cemented it in people's hearts, as far as being one of the scariest horror games of its time. All right, number 8, 7 Days to Die, 16 million. Okay, so I know that this is about top-selling franchises, but 7 Days to Die, really outsold some of the most famous horror games of its time. But you can build your own forts, craft your own weapons, vehicles, and of course, fight against zombies. That's what makes it horror. All right, number 7. I got for you some Dead Island. Not Dead Island 2. Dead Island. If they would have made the game a lot sooner, maybe they would have had a different fate. But Dead Island, it's known for its first-person melee combat, bright visuals, and gory zombie dismemberment. I think that was most people's favorite. This original game was remarkably successful, and that's why it almost took a decade long to do Dead Island 2. And if you remember, Dead Island 2 was originally scheduled for 2014. But it passed through like 3 different developers during the time, and it finally released in 2023. The sequel sold 2 million, about there. So I don't know. I don't know. It's never going to hit that peak again. But at that time, right when Dead Island came out, man, 16 million was an impressive number. But you know what's impressive? That this one is here. Castlevania, 20 million. Can you imagine how much this game would have sold to present day? But even though it came out when it came out, Castlevania still sold 20 million units. This is the oldest franchise on this list. Castlevania, the original was releasing in 1986. And this series began as a two-dimensional horror game. It really has a special place in the heart for all Nintendo fans, right? And the originator, right, of the Metroidvania gameplay style, right, along with Metroid. And it's still beloved all this time later, where you're having, a lot of games produced in the style. It was so influential. And to think that all this time ago, man, all this time ago it came out, and it still makes a top 10 list is just amazing. All right, at number 5, we got Dying Light, 30 million units. Okay, now we're getting heavy. All right, now we're getting into the kind of money that changes people's lives, right? Like you probably thought Dying Light sold well, but did you realize it sold to so many? And it surpassed 20 million in sales. That was surprising to me. The Dying Light offers like unique mirror edge style parkour, fluid combat, and the day and night cycle was pretty popular. The zombies of the day walk in the park, but at night they are terrifyingly mean, aggressive, and they will whoop your butt to the tune of 30 million. All right. Number 4, The Last of Us, 37 million units. What can I say about The Last of Us that I haven't said before already, right? Great story narrative. It became an instant classic, hooked millions of people with its storyline, gameplay, and its depth. People built people built emotional relationships to this game, right? And it really is one of the best-selling games of the 2010s. And, it's still being produced today, right? Here we go. This, you're probably not even going to believe, but The Walking Dead sold 50 million units, of course, driven by the show. And, the narrative series, The Walking Dead, was a breakout game for Telltale Games, believe it or not. Harnessing the popularity of the TV show, it just blew up. It was a 4-season-long episodic series, and it revolved around the protagonist, Lee Everett and Clementine, and it really rode the back of the show. I mean, that's all we can say. And 50 million units is what Telltale has confirmed that they've sold to the series. Man, that is a lot of change. And how did they spend it? You already know. All right. Dead by Daylight, 50 million also. Oh, man. Now, is it a franchise? Well, not yet, but they did announce they'd be expanding it, right? But Dead by Daylight is a asymmetrical multiplayer game, as you guys know, or maybe you didn't know. Four survivors are trying to escape a trial, and their objective is to complete all 5 generators. However, a player-controlled killer is hunting them down, trying to sacrifice them to the entity. Well, it was fun enough, right? Fun enough to sell 50 million, and one of the main pulls of Dead by Daylight, it's its unique chase mechanics. And it's frankly unlike any other multiplayer of its time when it came out. And, it was really a horror game for a lot of people. And it was fun because you were playing with other people. And it just gave some callbacks to Halloween's Michael Myers and Scream's Ghostface, that kind of stuff. And, 50 million doesn't lie, right? And at number 1, Number one, Resident Evil, of course. Overall, 142 million overall sold, right? Oh my. This is the juggernaut of all horror series, right? Resident Evil, since the beginning, right? Since the beginning, has sold 142 million copies of their games, of the franchise. And man, that's only going to grow because this is a brand now that people stick with. I own Resident Evil games, multiple Resident Evil games. They're part of my personal list, right, of games that I play. And when you look at these games that I just mentioned as far as top sellers, that the industry, okay, the industry themselves would consider horror games, they're much different than what we would think, right? There's some games that you don't play here. Like I don't play multiplayer games, for example. The Castlevanias made my list. Dead Island, for example, are some of the games that I played. I never played The Walking Dead. I played The Last of Us. And Dead Island I played, for example, right? But those aren't some of the games that I think about when I think about Halloween and I think about horror games, right? And when you look at all the franchises that are out there, right? Overall, what do you think about, right? You think about the Silent Hills. You think about Five Nights at Freddy, for example, with my grandkids is what they play, right? Fatal Frame, right? Fatal Frame, Left 4 Dead. There's so many things that I could name here that would make it, into horror game charts. But I can tell you what I think about, right? And you guys can tell me what games you think about when you think of Halloween. All right, for me, let's say at number 10, I would say Dead Space that I played on the Xbox 360. That comes to mind. Another game that I specifically remember playing on Halloween, and this was Resident Evil 4, right? Resident Evil 4, that comes up to mind on the Wii. Zombie U. I love my Wii U, and I love that mechanic. And when I think of Zombie U, you know what I always think about? Fatal Frame, Maiden of Blackwater. Let me tell you guys, when it comes to horror games, having that controller, that Wii U controller, and using it as a camera to capture ghosts, it's a different game experience. Zombie U with that controller is a different game experience that, if you can afford to, right? Let me tell you that the Wii U is an underrated console. And if you can collect it, go get it. If you need to mod it to put in games because the games are too expensive, do that. But if you're a retro collector, do get the Wii U. That is my recommendation. What do I think about also Resident Evil Code Veronica on the Dreamcast, right? Another Resident Evil. But yeah, man, those mechanics. And I remember when that game came out, it just blew up. It's all that people could talk about. And who doesn't love the Dreamcast, right? Here's another one. What about House of the Dead on the Wii? That's right. Man, the Wii is still a fun console. I'm going to make a separate specific video on the Wii regarding adults. I have a list of topics that I go through, and that's one that I wrote down there. But yeah, man, House of the Dead, man, playing it in the arcade and being able to play it at home, and even the kids love it. Anybody will pick it up, especially on the Wii, and it's a great game to play on Halloween. All right, another game that I remember, and this one was not playing myself, but I bought it for my son, and it was Resident Evil, the first one, on the PlayStation 1. My son loved this game, and I loved watching him play it. For me at the time, believe it or not, the mechanics as far as crafting were too complicated for me, right? Because I just, I would work like 12, 14 hours, and I just wanted to come home and play. I wanted to start killing stuff. And I wasn't used to okay, we got to figure out this. How are we going to get through this door? I got to combine this with this in order to make that. I didn't have the patience for it. And, but I would love watching him play and how much fun he had with that. All right, a game, right, that's criminally underrated, right? And if anybody could play this game in its true form, it would actually be on in Japanese on the Sega Saturn, but Baroque, you can get it for the PS2 or the Wii. And just the ambience of that game is horror, right? It's heavily inspired by Shin Megami Tensei, but let me tell you, it is something to behold. I made a video on this particular game, but you guys need to go check it out. It's underrated. You can get it for a decent price out there. You can play it on the Wii or on the PS2. If you haven't done so, you may want to take a look at it. Number two, right? Number two of the games that I played on Halloween. Ghouls and Ghosts, of course. Man, I love that game. Spent so many quarters, played it on home console. I love that game. How it's not on this top 10 list of sellers, I don't know. But man, this game is better than some of the games on those lists. Let me tell you, I play this over, a multiplayer game any day, right? Ghouls and Ghosts. And number one, right? Let's get to my number one. My number one Halloween game is Splatterhouse on the TurboGrafx 16, the first one. I love that game. I love playing it in front of my kids. It was great fun. It's so suspenseful and hard, and for the time, that was horror, right? That was horror. Good, clean fun. And, those were the days, man. Let me tell you, when it comes to Halloween, those of you who are parents, who are new parents, let me tell you, when my kids grew up, right, when my older kids grew up, the one time that I would be depressed, I actually wouldn't be on Christmas because, growing up, I would have to work a lot of the Christmases. But I would usually get off in time for Halloween, right? Because a lot of the bosses had kids and they wanted to do the Halloween thing. And I remember the first year that there was no Halloween for me, right? Like I wasn't a parent of Halloween. Man, was I depressed. And let me tell you, today I get to do it over again. We're going trick-or-treating. For those of you parents out there, let me tell you, don't miss these days. I know you might be stressed. I know you might feel that you have other more important things to do. Screw all that. Take the time. Spend the time with your kids. Go out there. Get that candy. Go to the mall. Whatever it is you do to celebrate the day, go ahead and do it. Before the age of this political correctness where Halloween wasn't cool anymore, we had great fun with the family. It's still a fun day to have. And let me tell you something. I'm going out there. We're going to knock on some doors, and these kids will get some candy. All right, guys. Happy Halloween. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you on the next one. Take care.